and welcome to Beating a Dead Horse. If this is your first time joining us from the wonderful 25 Years Later site, I'm Sean McKinda.
And I'm Jackson Keller.
And if you don't know what we are about, we are a podcast that essentially takes a look and analyzes movies through the lens of death. We kind of discuss how a character's death or lack thereof can impact theme, pacing, just in general plot, whether it is viewed as necessary or unnecessary, and kind of go from there. And a lot of times it does tailspin into a bunch of wild and wacky directions, but like that's what we want to focus on, but we make no promises.
Sometimes we end up making an argument for why Die Hard is about like ethno-nationalism or whatever.
Or we'd spend a quarter of a conversation about A Quiet Place yelling about Cloverfield. Just to cite some more recent examples as well. Also, as a heads up, we do say the F word and other things, so like if that offends you, I apologize, but I promise like our reviews are still good beside that.
Not that F word. We mean fuck.
Yeah.
So we're 100% clear.
Yeah, we are. I forgot that there's two F words now. We say the fuck word, not the F word. With that said, though, well, let's talk about what we're talking about this week. Because we are, for the first time, being hosted by 25 Years Later, we decided to take a look at a David Lynch film. Since the site's roots are based in Twin Peaks and the basic Lynch mythology, we decided to, in honor of that, celebrate something Lynchian. And before we go into this, we should preface that I have seen maybe a season and a half of Twin Peaks.
And I have seen nothing at all before this. No David Lynch productions. Although I had been intending to, because a friend of mine is constantly hounding me to watch Twin Peaks.
So this is going to be a very fresh take on David Lynch's. We don't really know much about him. I liked what I've seen of Twin Peaks. I just got busy with college because it's college and that's what it does to you. We'll probably actually go and talk about Twin Peaks maybe this summer or something, because I think that might be a really interesting one.
We have the time to watch everything. It'd be interesting to do like the old seasons versus the revival. That'd be a good episode.
Yeah, so look for that. We'll talk about it at some point. We do tend to, as a heads up, focus on movies as they're coming out. So like we've got, obviously we're going to talk about the Infinity War, and I think next week we're talking about just death in general in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because we both have a lot of strong feelings about that, and we haven't had an opportunity to do it yet. Also, we do give spoiler warnings before we start talking about films, so if you're like, I just want to kind of get a quick taste on how they felt about a movie or something like that, we'll let you know before we start telling you, who dies in movies, because some people might consider that to be a major spoiler. I don't really understand why, but I guess, if you're like, the Godfather dies at the end of Godfather 7, somebody might be upset.
My favorite film, Godfather 7. The Godfather goes to space.
Godfather Revengeance. So yeah, we, as I said, we did watch a Lynch film this week. Specifically, we watched his first full-length feature film, Eraserhead. I picked this one essentially. Neither of us really knew much about Lynch, so we just kind of went, this one sounds good.
I've seen the poster of the guy with the silly haircut. I recognize this.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing like an ad for it on Hulu at one point when it got accepted in the Criterion Collection, and I'm like, the Criterion Collection is a good thing. I guess it must be a good movie. All right. So that's kind of how we ended up on this one. And I'm not upset that we did.
No, I'm upset for other reasons, but not that we did this.
just general life reasons.
Yeah. So Eraserhead. This is the kind of movie where I wanted to go in totally blind, but I happened to overhear some people talking about it, which maybe colored the way I was seeing the movie a certain way. But it's not to say that I thought it colored it in a bad way. In fact, this is the kind of movie, real, like art housey, like very surreal and abstract, where I hit a point where I almost feel like my opinion on whether I thought it was good or like the narrative is well constructed, just isn't that productive of a conversation. And with these sort of movies, it then becomes more of a matter of like, well, what sort of insights can we glean from the madness? And is this a hole of madness? Yeah, very very interesting hole of madness. I never a lot of great imagery. The sound design,
Oh my
in
god,
particular,
the sound design.
was fantastic. I wish I was not super duper lazy and actually bothered to get up and turn the subtitles off because they were on by default in the YouTube streaming. uh, but you know what are you gonna do? It didn't distract me that much. And yeah, overall, really a really interesting. Again, I am not upset that we chose to do this film for this podcast.
Yeah, I knew even less about it than you going in. The closest I came to finding anything out about it was reading the YouTube thumbnail as I went to rent the movie, and it's like, man has lizard baby, and I'm like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing today. And so I went through and watched the entire movie, and I really enjoyed it. It was really, really unsettling. The sound design worked fantastic to keep you just on edge. I was, headphones on, and it was just a constant stream of noise, essentially. Like, very meticulously crafted noise, but it just kept you just off kilter and unprepared for what was coming next, and it was beautiful in a very, very upsetting way. I honestly, as I was watching it, the only thing I could think of was one of our long-standing jokes between Jackson and I, which was, I am thrust into darkness and I am afraid. Because I was thrust into darkness, and let me tell you, I was afraid.
I mean, that might be the best way to sum up this film. Honestly. Yeah, you're just fumbling around in the dark, like trying to grab onto something solid, but then when you do grab onto something solid, it melts in your hands, and you get a bunch of like warts on it.
There's maggots in your mouth somehow, and everything is upsetting. And
So what this really reminded me of, there were some parts where I don't know if this is even something that I made you watch or something that is like infamous on the internet. But did I ever make you watch Pickle Surprise?
Yes.
I was very much reminded of Pickle Surprise in this. If you
I'm
don't know,
save everyone the Google before Jackson recommends it. Don't.
Well, but it's not like.
Don't.
I mean, I wouldn't watch it at work, but you're not gonna like go to jail or
don't. I see where you're coming from, though, in a weird way, but like, whereas Pickle Surprise is just kind of a thing that happens, this feels like everything is very carefully curated to elicit a certain emotion.
The visuals reminded me a lot of like particularly the lady with like the
radiator
pipes.
lady.
Yeah. Like particularly her, and like I'm having some flashbacks. But no, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like Pickle Surprise, I don't know what the fuck Pickle Surprise is from, but it's certainly not like a celebrated Criterion Collection level film.
Oh, it's right up in the Criterion Collection with Eric Andre and Tim and Eric.
Nightmare.
All right.
Is there anything else we can say? I mean, I don't know if this is even the kind of movie that like you could put that much of a spoiler thing on. It's not so much about the plot. But I guess, do we want to move into spoilers?
I was gonna say, we can kind of throw down like a loose spoiler warning. Like, I will say, like, as we said, the less you know about this movie going in, honestly, probably the better. We're not really gonna spoil any plot details as much as some of the mystery and intrigue that is a David Lynch film. So, like, flat out, the plot in this is almost non-existent. It's much more. It is a movie about feelings and emotions and things that are elicited from scene to scene, as well as a thematic through line, but not so much a plot through line.
I mean, yeah, because the plot you can basically summarize in the YouTube description as "man has a lizard baby?" ? Um, and the rest of it is more about uh, imagery and symbols and you know, all that good stuff you learned in 10th grade English class.
Yeah, you get the metaphors and the similes used in like or as.
Personification, or maybe lizardification.
I'm gonna let you just wallow in that line. Um, so yeah, let's talk about this movie a little bit.
Let's put on our serious faces for this serious indie art house academic film. Very serious business.
Where do we begin? Because like the beginning's a really hard place to begin at.
It is, but I feel like it's a little appropriate for me just because I think when you're talking about spoilers for like an art film, it's less about like knowing the plot, like that ruining the experience, like having some sort of grand twist ruined for you, and more just that the more you know about the movie, the more it's going to color your perception a certain way. So for example, as I had alluded to earlier, like just by complete coincidence, I had happened to overhear like a couple different people talking about the movie, and the main thing that I was getting from it was that this film was about the anxieties of having a baby. You know, he has a literal like monster for a child. I had overheard that this would have been made around the time David Lynch had his first kid. I don't know if he has more than one kid, but he, you know, around the time his daughter was born, it would have been on his mind, like all that stuff. So that was what was really on my mind and sort of what I was looking for, kind of that thread going through. And it's kind of there front and center at the beginning when Eraserhead, that's not his name is Henry, but I'm probably going to keep calling him that. We get him floating in space, and I don't even remember the order of the shots, but we have the mechanical automaton man like pulling levers, and a giant sperm comes out of his mouth and like flies into a planet and kind of impregnates it. And from that moment forward, I was just like, all right, time to look for sperms and holes and all this other like birth stuff. I mean, we made that episode about Delivery Man under the pretense that it was about birth, but I mean, that's what this movie kind of was, but like unironically. It wasn't just about birth though. It certainly wasn't the only thread. Maybe not even the dominant thread, depending on how you look at it.
No, it really becomes more about living with a child and like the impact it might have on you in a lot of ways. I think that there are. So I do want to kind of preface this by explaining my reading of the movie, which was when I first saw this movie, I kind of took it apart more of a scene by scene because, as I said, I got much more of a. It's dependent on how each scene makes you feel. And so, like, the first scene left me with a lot of confusion. And then the second scene of Henry kind of walking to his apartment, I actually started to kind of question whether this was supposed to be like a early 1920s silent film surrealist type deal, because he kind of did like the yakety sax type of walk up and down a hill, like I was having that as he was kind of going up and down. I'm like, all right, I'm not really sure what we're going for here. And like, I feel like both of those really played a role throughout as far as just kind of the aesthetic of it, because it did also kind of play as like a 1920s surrealist element to it. Neither here nor there. So like I really focused on more of a scene by scene interpretation of it and focused on what each thing kind of elicited for me emotionally, and how the sound design played into my discomfort, and why he got a worm in the mail in that scene, and like where was it leading, what was it planning to. I did not have the ideas of fatherhood yet instilled in my head, and wasn't until Jackson pointed out that I'm like, all right, a lot of these scenes kind of fall into that place. But I think, as we said, this is one of those films where there's not really a wrong way to read it. I mean, I don't really think there's a wrong way to read any film, but like this one especially, because like you go in on this on a different mindset, and you're gonna be confused, lost, and absolutely hate it. If you go in knowing what you're looking for, you're gonna see fatherhood or whatever other type of theme you want to see. Or if you're kind of going in blind, just like, all right, I will accept what thou givest upon me, you might get something like what I did, which is this scene's really weird, and trying to connect it to the rest of the movie the entire time, but more so focused on what that scene brings to the table.
Yeah, there's one thing I actually really appreciated about this movie is that despite having gone in with these certain notions of what it was going to be, and in some ways it did meet those expectations, but in other ways there was enough richness in the visuals and the like the sound design especially I was not expecting. Just that I felt like I was able to walk away with kind of my own personalized experience with it, because thinking about it more, like the elements that keep sticking out to me is that maybe thinking about it just in terms of fatherhood or birth is maybe too narrow, just because there's a lot of, there's a lot of things going on with this movie. But specifically, one of the biggest threads with the sound design is, again, this very meticulous cacophony of just like hissing and sputtering and constant noise, and the baby crying and is wailing. Sometimes it sounds like it's laughing at him. It all, and there's so little dialogue. There's only like one scene really of real like back and forth, like staged, sort of like a traditional narrative. And even then, I mean, I'm talking about the scene where he meets Mary's family, and even then it's just completely bizarre.
Yeah, like there are long pauses between sentences where you're wondering if there's actually going to be a response or not.
Yeah, and then like a grandma who I thought was dead at first, but like was smoking a cigarette, and
a Grand Moff Tarkin.
Now I'm gonna let you stew in that one.
I've stewed. Continue.
Apparently, all right, now you've stewed. Now you've stewed. Yeah. So, but even in that scene, what I think the element that was most interesting to me, like maybe my favorite, for a given value of favorite, I guess, visual in the whole movie was the chicken, the tiny chicken that dad makes a big hullabaloo about it being like man-made and artificial and not real. And then of course when Henry tries to carve this tiny chicken, he puts his fork in it, and this very gaping vaginal hole starts like oozing blood for a long time. And I believe this is before. Yeah, this is definitely before he knows about the monster baby. But that less so about like sort of the obvious like imagery there. I'm more interested in like the statements that the dad makes about it being all man-made and like artificial, and that gets me thinking about like the automaton man pulling the levers, and the scene with fucking Paul. Fuck Paul. He always messes everything up.
That was genuinely funny, I have to say.
That was hilarious. And also just that whole like nightmare fever dream sequence was just really great and interesting. But when he goes and like his head shavings are, turned into Eraserhead, the title is about more than just his dumb haircut.
Literally unbelievable that it was more than just about his dumb haircut.
Yeah, I was shocked. My mouth was agape. But so what I kind of see with all those elements, and of course the baby is this common theme or motif of not just birth but production more generally, and what a nightmare it is how there's all these industrial noises that are just keeping you off kilter, like the noise the baby makes, like keeping you from sleep, like the
machine that when he's making the erasers out of his head, it makes a sound very similar to like the start of the baby crying. So it sounds like they essentially took the crying noise, chopped it off at about like a beat and a half, and just played that every couple seconds.
Yeah, totally. And so just with the way that like all this noise, like I think that there certainly is this idea of not being able to deal with the unexpected arrival of a baby, making it like a literal monster that he ends up stabbing to death at the end. That's all certainly there, but I think that by having this broader idea of like production, I think it makes it sort of this interesting, almost this critique of society or capitalism without being super duper obvious and like beating you over the head with it. There's a degree of subtlety there where this theme is present and clearly important, but not gratingly so, which I appreciate it.
It gets a very Orwellian or Huxleyan, I guess, the Brave New World guy, vibe to it, like as you're talking about it, especially because like it brings in the mind of the pipes, as the dad was talking, like I lay down every pipe in this city or whatever, and like that sentence right there brings a very Brave New World type of vibe to mind, which jives with the idea of production, since children are essentially produced in Brave New World, and introduces a really interesting idea on how we look at the necessity of production and reproduction as a whole. There are a lot of layers to this, I think, and it really depends on how you want to look at it. And sometimes you look at it after he kills the baby and think, oh, hey, it's Gypsy from Mystery Science Theater 3000. That did kind of ruin the ending for me a little bit, because like the head was still really creepy, but it also just looked like a big version of Gypsy's head, and I'm oh hey.
Speaking of things that ruin other like serious elements, I cannot watch like an abstract movie. Like this is a problem for me when we did our 2001 episode too. That fucking shooting stars meme from however long ago. Anytime there is like someone floating in space, like in like a movie, and it's very weighty and serious, like I cannot help but giggle and think about that dumb meme. And like especially here, because like the sperm like fires off, and I was playing the song in my head, and it put me in not the correct like mood to be in at all.
See, at least I was gonna say, at least I managed to make it to the end before it all came crashing down. And I'm like, oh hey, what's up? How you doing there? Let's talk about the baby. Actually, I would kind of, since like the baby is the one thing that dies, literally. But I think like I kind of want to talk about the metaphorical deaths that surround the child. So like this lizard baby can be taken as a literal lizard baby, or it can also very easily be taken as how the parents are perceiving the child. And like this is going to tie into the whole idea of parenthood that Jackson was talking about, and I think it's really interesting, especially because this is essentially how he presented it. So I'm totally stealing your thunder, Jackson. All credit to original artist Jackson. But I think it's really interesting, kind of watching the parents' perception of the child as this monster, because I after you finished telling me about this, I don't know that the baby actually was ever a monster, and I think that's just what they perceived it to be, because we first start to see this with the mother, who starts to kind of lose her mind dealing with the baby crying and not eating and just babbling and all the time. And like when she eventually breaks, the really telling scene, she goes down and she's trying to jiggle her suitcase out from under the bed, and in doing so, she puts her head down at where the bars are, at the footrest, I guess, on the bottom of the bed. And it essentially forms what looks like a jail cell around her. And, jiggling, it looks like she's rocking the doors of her jail cell. Like, let me out, I'm just trying to get out. And, it's very clearly a metaphor for her, feeling trapped where she is and, like, unable to sleep, unable to live, unable to do anything that she wants to do because of this child, be it a monster or not. And Henry, Eraserhead, doesn't necessarily feel this right away, and I think it doesn't start to happen until he brings the woman across the hall over for a night of raucous sex.
Just the way you said that, sorry.
The night of raucous sex occurring in the pool that appears in the middle of the bed. But the entire time the baby is crying, the woman becomes kind of aware of it. And, like, initially when the baby starts to cry, Henry stifles it. Like, don't look over here. Don't pay attention to this child that I have in my care. Focus on me, focus on us. But then, like, when they're going at it and it starts crying again, that's the only thing that she can focus on. And, when she brings another man home at the end of the movie and Henry sees this and she looks at Henry and sees only the child, it's, a metaphorical death of his social life, of what he can be, of, the ability for him to go out and do other things. So it's him kind of breaking, that's where he really breaks and ends up stabbing the child, which is probably like a real baby that he just killed. So it's, actually that's really creepy, because I wonder, like, if you take the idea that how literal do you want to take what's happening here? Because there's the idea that it was never swaddled at all.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
And regarding the scene following the sex scene where after he stifles the child, when it's kind of that nightmare sequence with that moment of his head popping off being replaced by the baby's, I thought that was an interesting moment, just because I don't know, this is something that we want to get into right now, but I think it's interesting, and we're talking about, speaking of stealing ideas, I watched this movie with my girlfriend. Great date movie, guys. just so you know, I highly recommend bringing the whole family to this one. So I was watching this one with my girlfriend, and we were talking about it a little bit. And when I had seen, like, basically what Sean was just saying, with how when his head is replaced by the lizard babies, like, that is symbolic of, like, the baby coming to define him. Like, he now is, by being shackled to this child, he can only live his life sort of, like, circumscribed by it. And she didn't really get that at all, especially with the later scene where the woman in the other apartment that he had sex with, like, looks at him and sees the lizard head. Like, I had read that as now that, like, after she had seen the baby, that, like, he was, like, a family man and, like, not worth wasting your time on. But she had seen that as the guy, like, her seeing through the moral failings of the guy, of Henry, of Eraserhead, of whatever, because he is such an inactive character that never makes any decisions and makes everything worse just by being sort of like static and like placid, I guess. Yeah, so basically what I was wondering, what got me thinking is that, again, having been sort of primed to see this movie about like fatherhood anxiety, I had sort of seen Henry's hollowness and his like blankness as a character. I had sort of seen that as like meaning that we, the audience, were kind of supposed to be projecting ourselves on him a little bit. Like he was a little bit our vessel for that reason, for like all these emotions like fear and anxiety. But she had thought that like we were meant to be more distant from him and really and really like react strongly in like a negative way to his to this moral failing of his, and like that the woman in the apartment actually turns out to be like the only like normal moral person, like seeing through him. And I don't know. I thought it ended up being kind of an interesting conversation. I guess I was just wondering what your take on that might be.
So, by the woman in the apartment, I assume we're referring to the woman across the...
Yeah. Not Mary, not the wife.
Okay, because, like, I got kind of a weird vibe from the woman across the street, and I don't mean to, like... What I'm about to say might come across as a little abrasive, and I don't mean to come across this way, but I think like you have to kind of take it within the context of the film and like the decision to use this character in that the end she's bringing another man home, and he's kind of an odd looking dude. So like I feel I just there's just something about that scene that, not to say that like she's an immoral character or anything like that, but I have to wonder why include it in that way, you know? Like, does what I'm saying make any sense in context of what you're talking about?
Yes, it does. And I was sort of wondering that too, but I then was thinking, well, everyone in this movie looks kind of odd. Even the, like, supposedly normal people.
But, like, that guy kind of cranks it to 11.
That guy does kind of crank it to 11. But then again, so does... I mean, Henry does a little bit, too, with, like, his creepy eyes and his stupid hair.
But, like, they're almost, like, polar opposites of each other. And, like,
yeah.
I guarantee that was an intentional decision to be, like, find the most opposite-looking dude we can.
Yeah, have him act in, like, an opposite way, too. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I don't know. I just... It got me sort of thinking, like, just this whole conversation about whether or not, like, Henry is a character that we're supposed to either, like, reject or project ourselves onto, or however you're supposed to interpret him. It's strange just because I don't... With this kind of film, it almost feels like it's weird. I guess like the way I'd best describe it is that part of me feels like that trying to answer that question might end up being a little bit fruitless, just because this is the kind of film where David Lynch obviously didn't give a fuck about what his audience was feeling in the slightest. Like, he clearly went off down his... Well, he cared about how they were feeling insofar as that he wanted them to be, like, unsettled, but as far as, like, the process of, like, identifying with a character how we might in another film, and, like, whether we like or dislike them, or identify them with any of those things that we do in a standard, like, 3-act structure narrative drama. With this film, it feels more like things just happen, and you just have to accept them.
I mean, yeah, everyone's basically like a tabula rasa for you to, like, put your own viewpoint onto if you see fit. Like, I don't think that any character actually has any sort of merit or meaning to them. Like, I agree with what you're saying, essentially, and I think, like, depending on how you want to read the movie and who you might identify with, like, part of this could be, like, as two dudes, we might be missing something that we don't see, you know, a relatable character element to it, because, I mean, clearly Henry is not necessarily a great guy. I don't know why I hedged that. He's clearly not a great guy. So it would be curious to get, like, I would love to hear more of her perspective, because I think, like, a female's perspective would be really good to have in this moment, because we're really only looking at Henry as a blank slate, and, you know, it was directed by a guy. I'm probably mainly dudes. It was 1977. Let's be honest. So it's really hard to say whether, you know, it was intended for a feeling with the female characters, but, like, I don't have the ability to say that as a dude is really what it boils down to. Is I can't tell you how I would feel in that situation. Like, obviously she's correct in that, you know, it would make sense for people to see through Henry as a bullshit dickhead. I'm sorry, bullshit eraserhead. So,
man, we just gotta keep throwing each other in jail today, don't we?
I know, right? Oh man, fuck this shit. It's but, like, it's just, I think different perspectives are gonna get wildly different things from this. Like, and I mean, that's basically the theme of this episode. Different people are just going to get incredibly different results depending on how they're reading it, what they're perceiving in each scene, how they want to take it. And I honestly think I would like to watch the movie again with her perspective in mind and see if I can identify someone to feel for and not just watch in a things happening type of way.
Right. Well, because I think it's interesting, because I do think that we do get a few moments. There's, like, one scene where things are a little more normal. Sort of like I said earlier with that one scene where the characters, they don't act like real people, but they are definitely filling, like, a certain type of role. Like, it's almost like David Lynch's own, like, fucked up fever dream take on sort of this, almost like a sitcom family, like the working class dad who lays down all the pipes, and, like, the mom who wants...
Oh my god, this is just another fucking level.
Well,
this is the 70s. This is when sitcoms would be huge.
No, I mean, but it totally is. And, like, all the focus on, again, the chicken as, like, a product, as, like, the fancy new product that the dad would buy, and, like, Mary being, like, scared and, like, inconsolable over this lizard baby, and, like, the mom, like, really insisting that Henry take responsibility as the father, except also then, like, macking on his neck weirdly, which is maybe the most inexplicable thing in the movie, and that's saying a lot.
And, you know, there's that, of course, infamous scene in the middle of it where he just goes, "Did I do that?" And, like, that's
No. Oh, don't you dare explain what that's from. We all know. We all know. We all know exactly what you were getting at.
I'm really happy that you cut me off, because I couldn't remember the name of the show.
It's Urkel. The actual name of the show doesn't matter. It's just the Urkel show. Oh God. So Urkel notwithstanding, yeah, but, like, I think that as far as character identification goes, maybe these issues of it is that we get that scene, then we get the scene where Henry and Mary are, like, living together, that culminates with the bars, like you were talking about, and then she leaves, and then pretty much the rest of the movie goes into nightmare mode and never comes out of it. Like the pretense of like following any sort of traditional narrative script structure is kind of gone and out the window after she leaves. And the only other, not the only other thing, but one other thing within that nightmare sequence,
Which one?
The one after he and the woman across the hall start having sex. That one.
Is that the when we find out why it's called Eraserhead, or is that the one
Yes.
where his wife is there?
Where we find out why it's called Eraserhead, like the beginning of that one with the lady in the radiator.
Okay, yeah.
Where she's on the stage. Because I think that speaking of giving credit where it's due, she also my girlfriend also was talking about sort of the like abortion thread running through this, and she had mentioned it earlier, but then like where it really became something that I ended up watching out for the rest of the movie was when the radiator lady was like throwing the sperms all around, and like when we were both watching this, we were just like, oh no, don't do it, like we know what you're gonna do, like and then like when she steps on them and it like explodes into like jizz basically, it's that strikes me as like very much following in that scene, in that sort of vein of alluding in some way to abortion. Whether what it's saying about abortion, if anything, I don't know. But considering it ends with Henry killing it, I think that it's certainly something on the movie's mind.
So just to kind of I'd never really picked up on the whole fatherhood thing the entire time throughout. Like I was really blind to it somehow. And I just want to explain that I never got that the white explosions were semen. I thought it was milk, and I'm going to accredit that to the fact that I watched Akira like a week ago, and all the white stuff in that was milk. Like, it was explicitly milk. So I'm just like, oh, it's milk. All right. Cool. And so, like, I just totally whiffed on that part. Whoops.
I think considering how much is going on and like every single shot of this movie, I think it can be forgiven.
Oh yeah, like even if it was milk, it would you could probably make some argument for it.
Well, if we're talking about parents and like, milk is certainly important to the process of raising a child. It's certainly very associated with babies. I don't know why the radiator lady would be stamping on milk pods.
They're milk duds.
They're milk duds. No.
I think we need to stop.
Before somebody stop us, please, before this goes any further.
Oh my god. All right. We are done. We could theoretically go into just so many more layers of this movie, and like it might be fun to do again. Like who knows? We might talk about we will talk about another Lynch film. I think that's pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah, pretty much.
But we're gonna call this one here.
Wait, we need to decompress. We need to talk about some stupid Marvel shit next week.
Yeah. It's gonna be we're gonna probably argue and yell with the rest of the world more than each other next week, to be perfectly honest. That said, I've been Sean McKinda. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. That's SEAN_MEKINDA. I don't normally spell that out, but like we might have some new listeners. I also have a website, isortof.com. You can find everything I do there. I have a couple of articles I've written. I have a Twitch stream that you can get to over there. So like if you want to go watch me play video games, do that. Go follow me. all bunch of really cool stuff you can do to help me out. And yeah.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me on Twitter over at Jackson J. Keller. That's, I guess I'll spell it out too. That's JACKSONJKELLER. I don't really have anything else I do with my life at the moment, but you can read my tweets about stuff. It's great stuff, terrific stuff. I highly recommend it. 10 out of 10 tweets. Give me the love and recognition that I deserve, and also at me about my wrong opinions on this podcast, which nobody has done yet, although I have been accused of hating babies based on last week's episode, so that's progress.
You actually got accused of hating babies on my Twitch stream, too. One of my friends showed up and was like, hey, why do you guys hate kids? And I'm like, oh, great.
I'm so glad to hear that.
If you want context, go listen to our Quiet Place episode. It's not as bad as it sounds. If you want to keep an eye on what we're doing with the podcast, go check that out at BADH_cast on Twitter. We mainly just kind of tweet about little updates, things that are happening, things that might be coming up in the future. As always, we'd like to thank Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're on Spotify, a bunch of other places. Go check them out. Huge shout out to 25yearslatersite.com. If you are a longtime listener, please go check them out. They do a bunch of really cool stuff. Huge focus on Lynch, of course, but they're branching out recently into the new tagline is Damn Fine Movies and TV. So like they've got a bunch of stuff on Lost going up, Black Mirror, all that good stuff, movies. It's great. They've got interviews with some people from the Twin Peaks The Return, original Twin Peaks cast as well, I believe. Really cool site, really cool bunch of people. If you are just finding us now, please go rate us and review us on iTunes, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell friends, follow us on Twitter, spread the word, let people know that, hey, these two yahoos are entertaining to listen to, we hope.
Yahoos?
I mean, yahoos. Yeah, that's a word that people said in the 1870s. As I said, next week we will be yelling about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're not really going to be focusing on any one film in general, so more of a general discussion. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, kind of a way to make up for the fact that we ended up missing the boat on Black Panther a little bit, maybe. I got a lot to say about the way the universe sort of impacted that movie, as well as basically every movie, just because... Well, we'll get into the Marvel Cinematic Universe machine, but I guess if you want to join me, I will be watching Thor Ragnarok in preparation, because I'm such a Marvel shill that's the only Marvel film I haven't seen at this point. So I'll be rounding that out before Infinity War. So feel free to prepare by joining me with that, by watching some Thor, or whatever Marvel movie you either love or want to hear us complain about. The whole universe is at our disposal.
Literally. I will recommend go check out our Civil War episode. It's one of our first episodes, and I think it kind of is going to work as a nice lead into what we're going to say next week. So if you are just joining us and have not listened to our Civil War episode, go take a listen to that one. It's a big recommendation for us. Other than that, bye.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go